Kimbley IT podcast with myself, James, the founder of Kimbley IT. We've got Carl here, the technical director, and we're joined by Will Linard from Luminet.
Hey.
Will, what's your job title? I've forgotten it. Sorry.
Head of channel. Basically the dog's body for everything. Looking after the sales, channel partners, marketing, and everything else that goes with it.
So the unofficial CEO.
I wouldn't like to say that. I think I'd annoy my current boss, but yeah, deputy
headmaster. Carl, go on to our recap of what we got up to last week.
Okay. Interesting week last week. We got out and about. And the first place we got out and about was into Birmingham for Theo Profitas' SBS event.
So we won this a couple of years ago.
That's right.
I think it's about 2012 or 2013. Essentially, all you do is you tweet Theo on a Sunday between the hours of, I think it's 7 and 8 p.m. And then he just retweets like the 6 of his favorite ones that he likes. And then you become a member of his SBS club for life. So it's constantly growing every year because he has about 6 new winners every week coming on board. And every year he hosts this event, which normally has a decent speaker in the afternoon. And this year was pretty damn good with Sir Tom Hunter.
Yep, so Tom Hunter, Scottish billionaire, founder of Sports Division, JJB, that kind of thing. He basically sold trainers and sportswear from the mid-1980s onwards and made himself into a billionaire.
Well, he sold his company to JJB. He wasn't the founder of JJB. I think that's probably where he became the billionaire at that point.
Yeah, he was the founder of Sports Division, it was called, which I think I remember, James, when he mentioned it. I'm sure I remember that brand.
Well, you are a trainer fan.
Well, yes, I thought you were.
And he started selling trainers from the back of a van, so you're going to like that.
Yeah, I thought for a minute you were going to suggest I was a Shell Suit fan then. I thought you were going to jump in. I thought it was your opportunity to wind me up there.
No, you gave me enough grief about that on the day.
Just to wind James up a little bit further, I did enjoy the photo and looking at the size of everyone standing in front of that banner. James, I think you need to buy yourself a couple of yellow pages for these photos moving forward.
What you don't know is because I don't think you've met Carl in real life. Carl's really short and he was actually standing on a box.
Oh, right. Or is it those high heels?
That's right.
But it was a good day. It was a good day. The stationery, so they give you a bag at the end of the day, a gift bag, a goodie bag, which is normally Ryman stock, leftover stock that they can't get rid of. So it's always a bit odd. But I found the torch useful already. I've already used the torch in the garden that came in my bag. Did you get a torch in yours?
Yes, I did. Yep. Not used that yet. Mini rant. Very, very small rant. James, there was a catalogue in it.
There were 2 catalogues.
Shame.
The other rant I've got there was a thing called jelly beans in there, and I thought, awesome. I love jelly beans. And I get back, and they're jelly beans air fresheners. So, not what I thought they were. I was looking forward to eating those. And I get back, I thought, I'll have some of these. My daughter can have some of them. But no, bloody air fresheners.
I didn't notice as well that the Tupperware box we got was pop-up. So I said to Kat, what's the bloody point of this? It's only half an inch high. I mean,
wife loves that. She's already using that.
The pop-up box.
It's already in the fridge with some stuff in there.
Wow. So there you go, people. Get on SBS on a Sunday night, tweet to Theo and get yourself a free pop-up box once a year and some pens.
The pens are good.
I don't use them.
I don't use them either, but they are good.
You told me on shareholders' agreement on pain of death that I'd have to leave as a director if I used a pen.
Anyway, do you want to talk about Barks now?
Did. Yes. After that, I went to a charity event, which was held at the Glee Club in Birmingham for Property for Kids, which was put on by Gilly Cosgrove, who's the owner of Barks Design, which is a marketing digital agency in the Jewellery Quarter in Birmingham. It was a charity night, which was good. Curry, pint of beer, bit of comedy. Was quite funny. For those who are of the right age, the guy who's the comedian was taking us back to school, and his name was Pierre, who was from South Africa. And he said he realised as soon as he got to England that Pierre was clearly a French name as well, because he starred in the Tricolore book, Encore Tricolore. And he asked, why did everybody go on holiday in La Rochelle? Now, if you're of the right age, you'll find that funny. If you're not of the right age, which looks like you two millennials aren't, you can't see any humour in that whatsoever. Typical. Don't know what to do. And what do I do? James is at least 8 years younger, so you didn't do you wouldn't have done Tricolore, would you? Because you went to the specials. You went to a special school.
Well, I think Will's a couple of years younger than me as well. Do you know what he's talking about?
I've absolutely no idea. Absolutely no idea.
Those who are
smile and nod though.
Yeah, just say yes.
Those in their 40s out there who went to comprehensive school in the West Midlands will understand.
Do you want to explain this then? Because you've gone on about it, and there might be lots of. I suspect there's going to be lots of people.
There's a book, right? There was a book.
10 people that listen to this, probably 9 of them haven't got a clue, and the only one that does is you.
Well, when you learnt French at school in the 80s, I went to school in 1985 to secondary school. The book they taught you from was called Encore Tricolore. And in that book, they had all the examples of the things that you do. And most of the things that you learn in those books are of little help. For example, finding your way to the library, discussing things in the previous tense. And everywhere was in La Rochelle. All they ever went to was La Rochelle. But if you go to France, La Rochelle is one of the last places you're very likely to visit, La Rochelle, because it's completely over on the west coast against the Bay of Biscay with nothing else around it. It's an odd place. No one goes to La Rochelle, except in this book.
Sounds like a compelling read.
It's an educational book. It's meant to
Even more so.
You've got something else on the show notes next to it. I don't know what this is about. The Vistage Roger Harrop.
Yeah, well, I was at my Vistage day on Thursday, and the guy who was doing the speaker was Roger Harrop, who is a big speaker on the Vistage circuit, ex-CEO of many multinational corporations. Old. Roger won't mind me saying so. Roger's going to be over 60. So you'd expect something a bit dinosaur-based, but there was a little bit that came up with James, which I found quite interesting, was he was going through the buying stages of people in business to business and when they come in to talk to you, and that now McKinsey studies are showing that people are about 85% of the way through their buying journey before they talk to anybody. And he went through the buying journey and said, well, what is it that you need to do to market yourself so people can get to you at the right point? And it was, where are you in organic search? Where are you in pay-per-click, Google AdWords, AdSense, etc.? What does your website look like? Are people going to convert through the website, fill in the form? How are you building your brands, particularly to complement that on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, etc., those kind of things? And then eventually that brings everybody, when they've gone through that and they get your value proposition, they understand what you do, they've seen enough of you, they've built trust, they like you, that they will then go, I want to talk to Will about that. That's what I want to get. Yeah, comms, that's it. I'll talk to Will, because they've recognized and learnt who you are through that. Now, this was coming from someone who was a bit old school. So I found it interesting, James, because it was right, but it was being taught to dinosaurs by possibly a dinosaur. I don't know, but, he's old enough. But Roger was starting to get it. He got loads of videos and he understood like podcasts. He was like, yeah, that sounds like a really good thing to be doing. Now, whether he'd had a young person tell him what to say, I found it a bit refreshing for once, James, in Vistage, which can be a bit old school.
So useful talk then.
Yeah. Best part, you'll love this. You know how many people in the group will have listened to it?
You?
Only me. Yep. No one else took any note. That section was just irrelevant.
So Will, Vistage is a group that Carl is a member of?
I know it very well, actually. My first ever boss in my first ever job, which I'm sure you're going to touch on a little bit later, but he was the CEO of Vistage, Steve Gilroy. I don't know whether he's still there or not. Oh,
I don't know Will either now. They've acquired the Association of Chief Executives and grown. That name doesn't ring a bell, but then again, I don't know the board of the company, but you know who the organisation are.
Yeah, no, very, very, very valuable thing to be a part of. And look, for me, it's all about bringing people together, having those like-minded conversations. But it really resonates, actually. A lot of the time when I'm speaking to people now and they've been website leads, they've already made a conscious decision to buy from someone. So it's all about having that right internet presence. Really makes a big difference.
And I found it interesting, James, because the things that you talk about and we talk about, particularly that building of the brand and the trust, trust, not something you usually find in those kind of areas, yet they're not caught up. And here's a guy who was banging it out. Unfortunately, everyone else in his peer group age range were just dismissing it as still irrelevant.
Well, you always get people that are a higher age group that are out of sync and actually get things that the younger people are thinking. For you, for example.
Thank you.
For the 60-year-old guy, for example. So yeah, there are always people there. It's not everybody, but there's only a few of them.
So that was why I've added that, James. Then that was the end of my week, pretty much.
Well, coming up next week, this week that we're talking about now, this week, I'm pretty much going to be doing marketing most of the week, and the only meeting that I've got is with Lovebrum, which is a charity based in Birmingham that we're going to become corporate sponsors of, and they just engage with local people and businesses to try and build a better Birmingham. So from what I've gathered so far is that each month they have 3 charities that put themselves forward, kind of like a pitch, and then money is rewarded to them each month. One of the charities will win, whoever the members like the most or thinks can go the furthest, and they vote on it, and that charity will get some money for, I don't know how much or for how long. That's what the meeting's about, just to find out a bit more. But we already basically agreed to become sponsors of it, just to get, again, it's a good thing to do, get brand awareness for Love Birmingham, and we get associated with it, so it's good for business and just getting ourselves out there.
Yep, and they've got some good events by the look of their calendar as well. Things you can actually go and meet some people.
A lot of events there with people, like-minded people that think the same as we do, and maybe able to help them out. They might be able to help us out. So it's all a win-win.
Yep.
You got anything planned this week?
I'm going back to our client's office in Sutton Coldfield tomorrow, so I'll look at the new office site. Wasn't able to do it today. I'll do it tomorrow.
You got anything interesting going on, Will, this week?
Nothing interesting. Lots of customer meetings. It's mid-month, so all boring stuff at the moment, unfortunately. But I suppose there's a lot of plans coming up now for the new financial year. So lots of budgeting and all that sort of good stuff is what we're involved with at the moment. Very, very compelling stuff.
So, Will, let us know a bit about your backstory and how you got into this compelling stuff.
How did I get into this compelling stuff? Right. So I never really planned for a career in technology. It didn't seem quite as sexy at the age of sort of 16, 17 when I was having to choose what I was going to do at university. So I decided to do something that was going to inevitably be quite fun, which was event management. That consisted of being at university, or actually in university, for no more than about 5 hours a week. So I had an absolute blast for 3 years. But I suppose it sort of taught me the fundamentals about running a business or managing projects, and it's sort of really quite important in the field of market that we're in. But in my second year of university, we had to do a work-based learning placement. And I must have applied for 300-400 companies, and I had one response. And this response was a little company that I'm sure most of the listeners, and especially you guys, would know of, and that was CompTIA.
Yeah.
So I joined CompTIA for I think it was 4-month work placement. They gave me a small little budget. We went and found a little conference venue, and we ran the first ever CompTIA conference over in the UK. So it was a great sort of way of getting to know the market, know the industry.
Was that in London?
Event was it was in London. It was down by Heathrow Airport, of all places. Had an absolutely fantastic blast putting it all together, getting all the keynote speakers and all that sort of stuff in place. And it really made me like technology and want to be a part of that industry. So I kept in touch with guys at CompTIA, and when I finished university on the Friday, I started full-time as an event and marketing manager for CompTIA on the Monday. But I quickly realised that actually events and marketing, it's all about being planning, and I suppose you can only go so far with it. So I decided to jump more into the sales arena. And CompTIA are obviously very big in the States, and they offer 2 main sort of services. The first one being a membership arm, and the second one being certification for techs, the A+ and Security Plus and all that sort of good stuff, vendor independent certifications. And they were going to start launching the membership offering in the UK, and they said, would you be interested in being a part of it? So the CompTIA UK channel community it is today was a brainchild of me and my old boss, Matthew Poyadji. I still remember today, we put together our first ever little round table. It was at our office in London. We had 10 partners come along. I think it was 5 or 6 resellers, and the rest were disties and vendors. And we had a real frank and open discussion. And I suppose the only one thing that I really remember from that meeting, aside from all the notes that I could probably pick up, but it was all about moving together, working together to create a better industry, a better marketplace, something that's going to benefit not only the people within it, but also the customers that are buying from it. And the metaphor that came out of it is, if you want to go fast, then you go alone. And if you want to go far, you go together. And that, for me, has really been the way that I've worked with Channel and other partners since this one day. But it grew to a nice little community. I think we had about 150. We ended up acquiring the Technology Channels Association. So Adam Harris, who was the CEO over there at the time, and Annette is now one of the chairmen at Vistage, actually.
Yeah.
So we built this great little membership department, roughly about 450 resellers, and did all the great stuff that a membership body should really have. Following working for CompTIA, I decided I wanted to go into something slightly different, and I'd always enjoyed the sales element of working for CompTIA. So left CompTIA, had a few weeks holiday, and got approached by one of my old members, a company called DMSL. And I joined these guys. They were a comms business. They sold anything from sort of broadband through to mobiles through to phone systems, and enjoyed 4.5 years over there. Great little company, getting to really cut my teeth selling products and services out through the channel. I built a great little channel proposition. We were selling hosted VoIP, and that's where me and you really got to start working together, I suppose, James. And
that's where we met. We met you. I was at a AMEX Pro in Birmingham, and you guys came down and did a little pitch, and I think I was the only one who you guys picked up during that meeting. The only one who could understand what you were going on.
Good.
Well, maybe it was. Maybe it was more advanced than what the others were expecting.
Yeah. Well,
because you had the word cloud in there.
That wouldn't have been difficult.
It wouldn't have been. And because you had you were using the brand Cloud Telephones, that's a bit scary for the old guys. There's no server in that wording, so they wouldn't talk to you.
Exactly.
Can the cloud break and be fixed?
Well, I mean, look, if we go back to when we actually had that meeting, cloud telephony was still in its infancy stages, but we had aligned ourselves to a provider called Gamma, who are pretty much taking at the moment. They seem to have a lot of people that are working selling their products, but it was difficult for IT guys to get into it. At the time, it was all this transition from break fix through to managed services. It was moving from server-based technologies into the cloud, and people didn't quite know how to deliver it. They didn't know how to bill it, I think, was the main thing. So what we put together was a really compelling proposition where we put together product stacks.
Well, your connections are playing up slightly.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. Turn your. It's a bit awkward, but turn your webcam off. It's a bit hard because we can't talk to each other. That's going to save some bandwidth for you, and it might improve it for a while. Turn it back on in a bit. You still there, Will?
Okay. Can you hear?
Can hear you. You're stuttering a bit.
Hang on.
Something running on your machine, I think, that's taking up your bandwidth.
Doesn't look like it. Everything is closed.
Oh, turn the camera back on. Let's carry on. Get back in your flow.
Right. So, where did you hear me up to before I started going all electric and all over the place?
When you were telling us about VoIP was in its infancy still, it started picking up.
Okay, so quite a while then. So look, we put together the value proposition quite early days when people were still used to ISDN circuits and using PSTN lines and all that sort of good stuff. And we really thought that hosted telephony would be the next place because everything else was moving from on-premise into the cloud. You look at things like you guys are doing. I mean, you've always lived and were born in the cloud. And the interesting thing is that all of the people that were coming through working for businesses, the millennials of today, were used to using things like the cloud and using VoIP technologies because they were using things like Skype and MSN and all these wonderful tools and tricks. And when you come into an office and you have to press 9 to get an outside line, and sometimes there'd be too many people on the phone, you wouldn't be able to get a line. It just didn't seem quite right. And pricing wise, it was cheaper than staying on an on-premise solution. So it really enabled people to be able to make that jump. And the value proposition for us was all about working with other partners or smaller partners that didn't have the resources or technology in place to start billing for these services or didn't want to start supplier relationships and committing to certain numbers with various suppliers. So we just tried to make it easy. Here's a billing platform. Here's the product. Order it and we'll help you deliver it. And it was really, really successful. We built the business up to about 4,500 handsets sitting off the back of the Gamma engine. And I had a fantastic time working there. Really, really enjoyed it and really enjoyed sort of the transition and helping people transition to make additional recurring revenues out of their clients. Fast forward to November 2017. I decided I wanted something new. I wanted to go and work for a slightly larger organisation. I fancied going back into the city. I just had a child and fancied going and getting a sort of a bigger city type job. And the first company that approached me was a company called Luminet. And I'd known Luminet from early days when they were first called Urban WiMAX. And essentially their value proposition was about wireless internet in London. And networks in London are very, very busy. All of the ducts are very, very old, and a lot of the buildings are very, very old. And delivering business class internet in London was intrinsically difficult, and Luminet's value proposition, or Urban WiMAX back in the day, was delivering that internet via an antenna over the rooftops.
Yep.
So the business itself has continued to transition, and it's very much about continual uptime and ensuring that businesses have got the right products or the right connectivity products in place to have their business running 100% of the time.
Yep.
There's nothing more frustrating than when your internet connection goes down, especially if you're using cloud-based technologies, because you just can't use them. And things like 4G are great for if you're a one-man band and you're working from home, or even if you're 3 or 4 man operation. But when you start getting larger than that, 20, 30 users, it's all about having uptime on your internet connection. And that's why I really try and reap the benefits of moving away from just traditional copper-based technologies into true fiber, because you're really blessed with having the right service level agreements and guaranteed uptime in place.
Sounds about right. Sounds good. And that's where you continue to be.
Exactly. I mean, and for me, the transition to cloud is becoming more and more. There is still on-premise servers that you can buy for various applications, but we're seeing less and less people use these, and we're seeing less and less people in Luminet. One of the other services that we offer is co-location, so rack space in a data center.
Yeah.
And it's becoming people are moving out of data centers. They're using the Azures, they're using the AWSs, they're using just other people's technologies. They don't require having these colo spaces anymore. It's all becoming serverless, and it's cheaper to deploy, and the costs actually over a monthly basis and having all the upgrades that come with it work out cheaper. But I suppose the real common denominator for all of those is one thing and one thing only, and that's having the right connectivity in place. If you don't have that, you're not going to run. And that's why I sort of evangelize businesses spending a little bit more on connectivity than what they tend to do. And I suppose the real reason behind this, and something that really bugs me, is when you see these TV adverts from Sky or BT where buy our TV package and get broadband for £1 a month. It really lowers the value of what people perceive in technology or connectivity. So if you can buy an internet connection at home for £1 and an analog line, a PSTN line for 15 quid, but your total internet spend 16 quid, you sort of think, shouldn't I be spending a similar sort of amount in the workplace? And that's one thing that really drives me insane. But we're now starting to get people to realise it is all about having uptime and base it on the time that you've had out, I suppose. If you've had outages in your business, how frustrating has it been? How much lost revenue have you had?
Yeah, well, Carl has a good point as well when he's talking to businesses about this, about broadband, and they want to go cheap on it and how unreliable cheaper broadband can be. Go find your router, turn it off, go and turn it off in the morning, see how long you can last for before you have to turn it back on. The internet's not important to you, do that.
You do it, or you say that, and then they flippantly go, oh, yeah, well, yeah, I suppose, oh, that's very funny. Yeah. I'm not spending that much money. They don't value it until they do it. They won't. And it's the classic adage. People don't learn until it's too late. They don't quit smoking until someone tells them they've got cancer. It's the same in anything. The risk isn't there until they know what it is, and then it's too late to take the action.
Well, and let's also look at pricing of it, right? So 100 meg lease line in Birmingham, you're going to be looking at 400 quid a month, roughly. Yeah. Now, it is a big jump from a 50 quid a month fibre to the cabinet broadband up to £400 a month. But let's break that down in working days. 20 working days, that's £20 a day. Yeah. £20 a day. How much do you go out and spend on Starbucks coffees and all the other stuff? How much do you put in your car for petrol? Is it more than £20 a day if you look at all of your team in there? And that's really the way that we try and make people realise it actually isn't that expensive. And talking about price has come down drastically to what it was when I first started in the comms world from joining DMSL. We'd look to sell a 100 meg lease line at between 600 and 700 quid. And I look at some of the opportunities in Luminet's Salesforce.com CRM system, and going back 10 years, 2 meg would be 1,500 to £2,000 a month. But the cost today, I mean, in London, you can buy 100 meg for 200 quid a month, and the prices come down so much that people are now buying into that.
Yeah, I agree. I remember buying 100 on 100 about 5 years ago at £1,000 a month.
There's a lot of hidden savings as well in there. So we all know, we know because we're techies, that computers perform badly when they're on slow internet connections or unreliable internet connections. You get lots of problems that you just can't explain, but you know it's related to the internet because the computer's reaching out to do stuff. And it's quite common with people who've gone on like a cheap fiber line, like here's your up to 20 megabyte line and you're only getting 2 megs down that line. And as soon as they flick over to something like a lease line, all their problems vanish. So we had this recently with a client, well, probably about a year ago, and they were on an old shared kind of lease line. It's the actual place that you installed a new lease line for us, Will.
Okay.
And they were having lots of computer problems, and it was internet related. But trying to get them to understand these problems are internet related was the challenge, because they think, no, it's my computer that's playing up. What's that got to do with my internet? But as soon as they moved over to the lease line that you helped install, all those problems disappeared, because it was the computer trying to reach out to get things on the internet, and it was struggling.
Yeah.
Well, let's also put it from your perspective as well. It makes it easier for you to support them.
Yep.
If you're running off a 2 meg line, you can't log onto the computer without taking everyone else in the company down.
Yeah. And the whole point of having a lease line is it doesn't go down, so it actually reduces our support costs, because we're not having to remote in and try and support things that are out of our control anyway.
Well, I mean, you say they don't go down. Every connection has the possibility of going down. Lease line is obviously a dedicated line into the building backed by an SLA, and if you're installing it from OpenReach, you're going to have a guaranteed response time and a guaranteed fix time and all that sort of good stuff that comes with it.
It's not going to fluctuate.
Yeah, but in London, it's even more dangerous to order just fibre on its own, because the skyline is constantly changing. There's always new building works going on, and one little JCB digger going down the road and they go straight through the middle of a few fibre lines. There could be hundreds of businesses down.
That happened to Virgin, didn't it, last year sometime?
Well,
in Manchester or something, they put it through a main heart. I don't know what the main line is called, like a heartbeat line or whatever.
Yeah, these things happen, and they happen more regularly than you think, and that's what we do in my current day job. Luminet's all about providing not just one but two options. So we provide the fibre under the ground and the wireless over the roof, and meet in the client's comms room. So even if there was someone to go and cut a wire actually in the building's riser or within the trunking, whatever it may be, there's still another connection coming from a diverse route, and for us that's really, really important. And
what happens in the rare occasions where someone's put a crane in and the crane's blocking the Wi-Fi signal and it just happens to tether the cable down below?
Yeah, it does. It can, but the way Luminet's built their network,
that's really happened.
It has, yeah. There's been a crane. There's been a crane that's got in the way of because it's all based on line of sight. So if you imagine you've got one antenna over on the base station, one on the client side, if something goes in the middle of it, you're not going to be able to get the internet there. You can't bend these beams. They're microwave beams. You can't bend them. But interestingly, the way Luminet's built their network is resilient. So you've got not one base station, you've got multiple base stations in London. So if you have an issue with one, 4 hour on site, and they'll just go and move it and reposition it to a different base station, which means that you can continue working. But I mean, a base station for us, so if we look at the BT Tower, for instance, that's an example of one of our base stations. We've got all of our antennas on there. And then you look over towards the east of London, you're on Tower 42. And these are sort of very, very tall buildings, and it makes it very easy to deploy. But talking about easy to deploy, this is one of the other downsides, I suppose, of having a fibre lease line.
What's the hardest?
It's the actual installation. Yeah,
what's the hardest deployment you've had?
I've got one that's been going on now for 16 months.
Is that because it's in a difficult location, or it's just
Wayleave? I'm going to go with Wayleave agreements.
You're spot on. Wayleave, the bane of my life. The bane of my life.
Explain what that is then.
So there is this thing called the Telecoms Act. And all carriers, so BT, Virgin, TalkTalk, all of these sort of companies sign up to the Telecoms Act. And as part of the Telecoms Act, it gives them rights of access to a site. So rights of access to be able to maintain, install new equipment and all that sort of good stuff. But where this becomes challenging is for landlords. Landlords don't necessarily want someone to have free rights of access to their site at all times. And the real reason behind that is that, well, say for instance, you're going to be refurbishing your building and Virgin have put a shiny new box down in the basement, and you say, well, actually, we're going to move that basement area to the other side of the building. Virgin could turn around and say, no, if there's no Wayleave in place, they have the rights to take it to court, and it could take up to 2 years for the landlord to be able to start making those changes in their building. And that's what a Wayleave's really for. I suppose it's to break the Telecoms Act, to allow the landlord to have a little bit more right over their own property. And this is one of the challenges that we face is Wayleave, getting people to realise actually it shouldn't be a really cumbersome document. It should really be quite simple and easy, but landlords sometimes see it as a way of making money. In London now, the average cost for Wayleave is £3,000. So not only is it getting the fibre installed, but it's also paying the solicitor's cost for yourself and also for the landlord. And that's really another selling point around Luminet. With wireless, we've not become what's classified as a code operator. We haven't signed up to the Telecommunications Act, and therefore we don't require wireless. So our lead time on wireless is 10 days, but fibre, you're looking at an average of 48, 49 days, I think is our current pipeline.
So is this the reason behind your 16-month one?
So the 16-month one required a bus stop to be closed.
Oh.
If it requires a bus stop to be closed, you've got to get approval from TfL and council. And if it requires digging up the road and it's going through a main road in London that's got three lanes on each side, diverting that traffic's bloody difficult.
How much will that cost?
Cost, not as much as you'd think. It's the time that goes into it. So I think that one was about £14,000 to have the works done, but the company required a guaranteed uptime internet, and they just have to pay for these sort of things. Yeah. And luckily, the government have put in some funding using the gigabit voucher scheme to enable smaller businesses to overcome these large sort of upfront costs, if there is any. The majority of time, there isn't any because digs have already been done, and there's normally BT fibre in pretty much every single building out there. But there is times when there's dig costs involved, and luckily the government will fund anything up to £2,500 for any small business that's never had fibre before.
So how do you see in the future, how do you see 5G changing the way you guys operate?
5G is really interesting, but it's probably, we say it's a year to 2 years off. In reality, it's probably longer. Don't quote me on these exact numbers, but when you're looking at 4G connectivity, it was revolutionizing. It was meant to revolutionize the way that we use our mobile phones. And to be completely honest, you probably don't need much more on your mobiles at the moment than you do get with 4G. But say, for instance, I'm in London at the moment. I do a quick speed check on my 4G phone. I'm going to get, 30 or 40 meg up and down, roughly. But that's all very dependent on how many people are in the local area, how many people connecting to the local mast, and so on. But the challenge, the real big challenge with 5G is the density of antennas that you've got to have. With 4G, you can connect into antenna way over 1 kilometre away from you and still get very good speeds. But with 5G, to get the maximum speed, you're going to have to be within 100 or 150 metres from an antenna or a mast.
And which due to in London, problem going through walls, isn't it?
Well, it's due to that, and also just it's like using your 5 gigahertz on your Wi-Fi router. On your 2.4 gigahertz. 2.4 is going to work from a further distance. 5 gigahertz is going to work closer, but you're going to have a better throughput and a more reliable connection if you're sitting closer to the Wi-Fi router. Exactly the same goes in this 5G space. But for 5G, the big challenges that we're going to face is the backhaul element of it. How are you going to get that signal? If you're having to deploy an antenna or something along those lines in densely populated areas, how are you going to get that stuff put back into your data center to transit out to the internet? And that's a real big challenge that a lot of companies are going to face. How others are looking at it, and some interesting stuff around, again, moving back to the wireless piece. Google have obviously got their Google Fiber offering out in the States. And interestingly, actually, last year in the US, I had a stat the other day that more wireless connections were sold than fiber connections, because it's a lot easier to deploy, it's a lot quicker, and it doesn't require all of the way leaves and everything like that. But Google started out their Google Fiber offering, and they quickly realized that actually running fiber from one town to another or trying to fiber up streets was extremely costly and expensive. And now they're using wireless technologies. Same goes for Facebook. They're now delivering wireless technologies, and they're using local council infrastructure. So things like traffic lights and stuff to be able to use and do backhaul on, which is quite interesting. Look it up. It's called Terragraph.
Terragraph.
Terragraph, Facebook Terragraph. That's their new wireless offering, point to multi-point solution. Very interesting stuff.
Anything for you guys regarding Huawei hardware in your business? Are you ever looking into that, or just?
We've never used it. We do know that you can probably buy it at about 50% the price you could have bought it for about 6 months ago. But we're a Cisco house.
I will love you.
It's bulletproof, isn't it? I mean, it just doesn't die. That's one of the reasons why we use it. It's expensive, but actually the price of it's coming down. It's becoming more in line, but we just love Cisco. It just makes sense.
Happy man there, Carlos. You love the bit command line like Cisco.
Well, James, it's been a while since I've had to build any infrastructure. But back when I did used to build infrastructure, I used to use Cisco because it would work. That was the whole point. I used to put Cisco routers in for ADSL connections because they never ever had to be reset. They never needed to reset to retrain the line and things like that. So they were just really reliable, which is ultimately what you want when you've got a lot of broadband out there. You just don't want phone calls all the time, and nor do these guys. Interesting about the backhaul issue on the 5G and how that will be dealt with. And could it be that Wi-Fi takes the precedence over cable eventually and becomes the leading technology?
I think it will do, and I'll tell you the reason why. When next time you're driving down the motorway and you'll always see these little mobile masts on the side of the road. And obviously, working for a wireless company, I now get quite excited when I see these. And what you'll notice on these, they've got long oblong antennas, and they're the mobile masts.
Yeah.
And underneath them, there'll always be a circular antenna. And those are exactly what we use in central London. So it enables people to run 4G all the way up the side, all the way up the motorway without actually having to run cables. And they can put one every 3 or 10 kilometres, depending what sort of kit they're using. But we can now throw our wireless stuff over 15 kilometres. Any more than that, you start getting interference, you start getting issues with curvature of the earth and stuff like that. But it just makes sense, in my opinion. Why would you bother digging up a road to run a cable when you can do it wirelessly with the same service level?
Yep, makes a lot of sense.
Definitely easier to manage it.
I think that'll be interesting to a lot of people, James, that listening. They probably won't expect that Wi-Fi. They expect mobile to be like leading, or 5G to be the one that takes it away, but actually not probably realizing that, particularly in urban areas, Wi-Fi is going to be the leading way of getting your service.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's becoming more, as I said, becoming more and more popular, more in the States than ever, more in the UK than ever. I mean, we service only London, and that's our only area to service. But we've got 450 square kilometres of coverage now. That's 150,000 businesses. We don't really need to go much further out to build our business. But there's others in the market. So M247 are up in Birmingham, and they're up in Manchester, and it's just easy. It's the same prices.
Does that mean, Will, you can put good quality broadband into places like Bond Street and Regent Street, which can barely get DSL and things like that?
Exactly that.
Because that's the irony of that, of the centre of London. You can't get Mayfair's got another part you just can't get anywhere near it.
But why? Let's look at it from BT's perspective. They're the ones that are generally deploying the infrastructure. And don't get me wrong, there's lots more in London now that are deploying fibre-based infrastructure. You've got the likes of G Networks, you've got Hyperoptic, you've got lots of others that are deploying their own fibre. But it's costly, it takes a lot of time, and it's a lot of disruption to the city. But for BT, if say, for instance, there's 100 different offices down Regent Street, and all 100 offices have had to use a fibre line in past, there is some people that are going to scrimp and save and put in a fibre to the cabinet connection if it was available there. Do they want to bastardise that revenue? Do they want to keep that revenue up rather than offering a quarter of the price solution that probably isn't quite as good, but the customer thinks they're getting a very similar sort of thing? So it's all about hammering that home to clients, making sure they realise the differences.
That is a very interesting point. Well, I'm looking at the clock because we want to keep this the podcast under an hour now. We're targeting an hour because we went way over last time. So shall we? You guys happy to move on to the next section in the news?
Yes.
Kind of talked about 5G, which 5G is always in the news anyway. So you got a bit of a bonus there.
Yes.
So you guys Carl spotted anything that in the news that you want to talk about?
Me?
Yeah.
Can I talk about priority?
You go for it. You talk about Priority Drive. It's now rolled out for you and I anyway.
That's right. Well, I noticed when we were at Next last year, Google Next, Google was showing us a new format of AI that they put into their Google Drive called Priority. What that does, it suggests things you've been working on or things that you've been working on with a colleague as what you need to do next when you open your Google Drive. So it's thinking about the things that you've last done and what you need to do. James signed us up for beta. Is that right, James? Is it a beta or is it early release? What would it be called?
It's beta, and we're under an NDA, by the way.
Well, I know. That's why I can't say too much about it.
Good. Just reminding you there in case.
Yep. No, I know. Well, that's why I asked if I could talk about it, because I understand that. I'm not going to give away too much of it, but it's good. It's already doing what they showed us at Next and already making good suggestions to me about 2 documents from 2 different clients, but they're both to do with the same process, and suggested I create a workspace. So when I open up my drive, I've got them right in front of me, and it's less time looking for stuff. That's what it's saving me, less time looking for stuff.
I did it for this podcast for the show notes for me as well. I loaded up and it had the show notes right there ready for me because it knew we were about to do the podcast.
I like it in the app on the mobile phone and in the web browser. It looks really nice. It particularly looks nice on the phone, I think.
I've got something in the news that's nothing to do with tech, but it is to do with every single business in the world, basically. So the FSB are lobbying governments now that they shouldn't sign big businesses up for contracts who have a history of late payments to small businesses.
Ooh, that is interesting.
Yeah, because all small businesses have problems with big businesses paying on time. So how do you get a big business to pay on time? As a small business, you can't. You really do need the help of a government and the possibility of them not being able to get big contracts because they've got a history of bad payments. So I'm looking forward to following that story and seeing how that progresses. Luckily, we don't deal with any big companies like that, but we do know of advertising agencies, marketing agencies that do have bigger clients who always struggle to get paid on time.
I've certainly been through that experience in previous businesses, James, without a doubt.
Yeah, well, we're lucky in our business. We don't get anyone not paying on time.
Yep.
The wonders of direct debit, eh?
Yep. Is that the same for you guys?
Yeah, of course. We're 14-day terms. We are over at Luminet, which I think's fair.
Yeah, it's perfectly fair.
Yeah, this old school 30-day thing it's a carry on from when someone sent a check in the post. It's old.
It is that.
Old.
100% down to that. Now it's modern direct debits. 14 days is actually long for direct debit, giving it on direct debit.
14 days is generous. That's considerate. But yeah, 30 is just silly. But I used to get 90-day terms and 6 months. Stupid
6 months.
Yeah. Big.
Wow.
One of the world's biggest providers of telecommunications. That was. I shan't name them. But yeah, ridiculous.
You also had big businesses that insisted on you buying a box for the season if you wanted to be paid on time.
Oh, yeah, Premier League, as they were Premier League football clubs. Yeah, you work for them, and then when you come to it, they go, if you want to work with us, you have to buy this and you have to buy that, and you're just like, here we go.
There we go. There's the rant starting. Get onto your rant. Get onto what everyone's been listening for. Here's Carl Heath's rant.
Okay, I'm ranting. It was my daughter's 4th birthday on Friday. Dixie was 4. And one of the things she wanted was like a space hopper. Didn't know it was a space hopper, as you and I might remember them from kids. But it's a bouncy dinosaur that you can bounce around in the house on. It's an inflatable thing. But it's pretty sturdy. You know, it's not a weak inflatable. So we got it, and she bounced around on it. And then we woke up the next day, and it had gone down. We had a look at it. She hadn't burst it. It had just split on the seam by about a pinhole size of air. It had split. Bought it from Early Learning Centre via Amazon. So we rang them up to say it had to be returned. Well, sorry, no, I'll roll back a bit. You go onto Amazon, you go to the return. It says you can call Early Learning Centre specifically on this phone number for returns where it is damaged or has failed. You phone them up and they say, oh, we don't do that. You'll have to go back to Amazon. We don't deal with it. And you go to Amazon and Amazon say, no, you've got to go to Early Learning Centre because they've got an agreement with you. You go back to Early Learning Centre, they say you've got to go back to Amazon. We went around that twice. Pretty frustrating stuff. Early Learning Centre would have absolutely nothing of it at all whatsoever. They were not interested on their help desk at all. They were awful. Really, really rubbish. Amazon, we got through to someone on Amazon where you can actually speak to someone, and the guy was brilliant. He just said, yeah, no, I'm really sorry. That's right. What are you going to do? Put it in a bag, take it down to this place in Telford that's nearby where you are. We'll have another one shipped to you. You hand that in, they'll hand you the other one. Really sorry it happened. Excellent. Amazon, a killer at that.
Well, I found with Amazon that Amazon returns are really good. If you've bought it by Amazon, it's fulfilled by Amazon. As soon as it gets fulfilled by their marketplace or a provider like Early Learning, who's an affiliate on their website, then that's when you start to get problems. So, for example, we had this Epson scanner for a client from Amazon, but it was fulfilled by a third party company, and this scanner was rubbish, and it took us about two maybe 3 weeks to get it actually finally sorted and get it repaired by Epson. But when you're having to deal with the marketplace people, it's not as good as dealing directly with Amazon. So from now on, I'm always going to try and buy stuff. I don't mind if it even costs a bit more if it's fulfilled by Amazon, because I know if there's going to be a problem with it, there's going to be no issues at all getting a replacement, because I'm going to send the replacement out before I've even sent the 41 back.
Well, that was it. This was fulfilled by somebody else, so you're right, it wasn't good. However, Amazon still did the right thing by us, even though technically they didn't have to. An Early Learning Centre would basically, there's nothing we can do.
Yeah.
There's nothing we can do. What if you can't afford to have a brand? You can't afford to treat people like that today's world with customer service and say that.
What you've got there is a great example of American customer service versus British customer service.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're right. Because what does that say to us? We'll avoid that place. You'll tell other people the story, and you continue like that. You won't have a business.
Exactly.
And you won't, because it doesn't take many more people to get the knock, and then suddenly, like you say, I'll go in future. Let's buy that product directly from Amazon, and that's it. So
that's probably what Amazon wants in the long run. They actually want you to have a bad experience.
Well, maybe you're right. That was the rant to get in that kind of technical situation where one company just goes, "We can't help you," and you're like, "Well, I've got no choice." The other one won't help me, and you just feel stuck in the middle.
You got any experience of that, Will? Any problems?
Yeah, I mean, we've just recently done up our house, and we've put in HDMI matrices so we could watch various different things on various different screens around the house. The moment I bought them from Amazon, of all places, and it got delivered, worked, and then suddenly the power cable went. Rang up or put a ticket on Amazon. Within 6 hours, a new one was at my door. Within 6 hours, and then I forgot to send the other one back, so I actually got charged double, and because I didn't adhere to their 4-week timeline to send something back, so it's my own fault. But to be honest, the customer service from those guys is exemplary. Look at it, and going to restaurants as well. I suppose if you've ever been to the States and actually managed to dine or dined out there, the service out there is something different to what we get over here in the UK.
James, do you want to add your recent experience of customer service when we accidentally bought something twice?
Yeah, so that was actually the Theopathetis thing on Tuesday last week, or Monday last week. We went and had lunch, and I went to pay for it, and it was on a contactless payment thing, and I dropped the contactless payment just as the payment was going through. Battery fell out, so the restaurant didn't know if it had gone through or not. So the waiter takes it away, brings back another one, charges me on that one. He says, "I'm just going to go and check to make sure that you haven't been charged twice." And while he was going away checking it, I was on the AMEX app, and yeah, I've been billed twice by it. So it still said pending, so there was nothing I could really do about it. So later in the evening, I gave AMEX a call and told them, "Oh, look, this is what happened. I've been billed twice." I said, "Don't worry about it. You don't even need to call us about things like this because you paid contactlessly. We automatically would not bill you for one of those two because it's the same amount in such a short time period. We can see that a double payment has gone through. We won't charge you for that. And if it, for some reason it does go through as a charge, you don't even need to call us. You can just go on the app and hit the dispute button on there, and we'll get it all sorted for you. You'll never need to contact the merchant. We'll do that on your behalf. We'll do the whole thing for you. You do nothing whatsoever, apart from letting us know that you've got a dispute on that payment, and we'll sort the rest out for you," which is just fantastic because I don't want to waste my time having to ring up the Slug and Lettuce to tell them the story of what's happened to a different waiter because the waiter who served me isn't in on that day and have to explain the whole thing and try and get a refund. So yeah, really impressed by the service that American Express gave me on that one.
Boom, American Express.
Again, American customer service.
Fabulous customer service. On the odd occasion, you can actually use the card to buy something.
That's true. You always got to have a backup.
So true. No, I'm in love with that Monzo Bank actually at the moment. That's my favourite.
I'm with Monzo as well.
Revolut is another one that I've heard good things about, and apparently you can save your money in cryptocurrency as well within it. Interestingly,
yeah, I'm staying away from that now.
I'm
yeah.
I'm waiting for Monzo to bring out their business bank. As soon as they do that, I'm going to move Kimbley IT to Monzo business bank accounts. They are the future of banking. These new startup banks, challenger banks.
Definitely.
All right, James, we've got 10 minutes left.
Yep. Let me know your recommendations. So what have you been watching on Netflix? What podcasts you've been listening to, or what software or whatever that you want to tell people about at the end of this show? Go ahead, Will.
The thing that we watched last week that we absolutely binged on was that Netflix series You.
Love it.
Oh my God, that was addictive to the point where I'm quite an early bedtime man. I like going to bed at sort of 9:15. We get up roughly 6 a.m. in the morning, so I like a nice night's sleep. But God, we were going through 3 or 4 episodes, still being up at midnight. Should we just do one more? It was fantastic. completely stupid. There's no way that anyone could ever get away with that. But it was brilliant. Really good watch.
Now, I've watched that as well. Now, do you feel it's a copycat of Dexter?
I've only ever watched a
Storyline's
couple of episodes
similar.
of Dexter, but yeah, similar storyline. I
similar
enjoyed
concept.
Dexter, but I never really got into it because I think the time when I started finding out about Dexter, it was on about the 89th series on Sky Atlantic or whatever. So,
well, it was on Netflix when I first signed up, so that was the first thing I binged on.
Now, you make sure you watch it if you haven't already.
Kyle?
Netflix, not particularly in the last week. No, I've been too busy back and forward to really get much TV in the last week. However, I have finished listening to the book, The Psychopath Test by John Ronson, which is a couple of years old now. And John Ronson is a UK journalist, and he investigates what makes people a psychopath, and he investigates the Bob Hare's psychopath checklist of questions that work out whether people are psychopaths. And he goes through and interviews different people. He meets a guy who ran a series of businesses in the US and turned them around. And one of the ways he turned them around was to close down the plant in the town. And by closing down the plant, he basically turned it into a ghost town and put 400 people out of a job. And he talks to him about whether he cares about it or he doesn't. And he's just like, this is done. You know, if you want to win, you win. Losers lose, winners win. And he goes into this case of Colin Stagg, who was falsely accused of being a murderer on Wimbledon Common in the 1990s. There's a guy in Broadmoor who faked his way into Broadmoor to get out of a prison sentence for a theft at 17 and then spent 15 years in Broadmoor trying to prove he wasn't insane. And Ronson goes into the description of what actually is a really psychopath and what is people with fringes of madness. Really interesting book. Really, really interesting stuff on it, and how many people in the normal society will have psychopathic and sociopathic traits to them, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they can't control them. And there are other, it's really, really interesting. And read by the writer as well, which I always like in an audio book. I do like the audio to be spoken by the person who wrote it, although it makes no difference because I don't know him and I don't know what he sounds like. But for some reason, I prefer it. So I don't know if it was him, but I feel comforted that I think it was.
My recommendation for the week is a BBC podcast hosted by Evan Davis from Dragon's Den. It's called The Bottom Line, and basically each week. Well, I'm not sure it's weekly, it does in series, but every time a new podcast comes out, it's normally 3 guests that he has invited who are specialists in a certain aspect of industry. So the most recent one, which was quite interesting actually, was behavioural science in the workplace. And so he invites 3 people in there to discuss behavioural science in the workplace, the pros and the cons about it, how to manage it. But each week's different. So for example, previously it was university businesses and how universities run their business, how they make their money. You then got the Internet of Things one, and lots of them there. So I'd recommend checking out The Bottom Line by Evan Davis, especially if you like Dragon's Den and those kind of things. It's not a competition thing. It's just 3 experts discussing industry trends, and there's a lot to learn from that podcast.
Yeah.
Sounds a bit like us, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Kimbley IT podcast taking over.
Yeah, less serial killers.
So that's it for this week.
Yes.
Thanks everyone for listening, and do subscribe if you can find the subscribe button anywhere. We've got a couple of listeners now, and we want that couple. We want that couple. Well, we'll listen to the last one.
Wow,
I really enjoyed it. It was really enjoyed it. My wife did say, "What the hell are you listening to?" Because it was about an hour and 15 minutes, and she just couldn't work it out. She said, "I don't have a clue what they're talking about." But that's what end users should not have a clue. They should just understand how to use it, not about all the workings behind it.
Exactly. So we want to double our audience from Will from last week. So hopefully we'll get 2 people this week.
Well, I had a quick look just a minute ago. You had 12 or 14 views. I can't remember which one it was. 12 or 14 views of that one. So yeah, let's try and get this one up a little bit.
Yeah, we'll do that. Well, hopefully. I don't know.
Putting my name in will probably help, won't it?
Exactly. Yeah, the superstar Will Linard, who's very hard to get hold of.
Never.
He's agreed to appear on this podcast.
Exactly.
An exclusive interview. How many interviews have you done this year?
1.
So it is exclusive.
Just now. So it is exclusive.
Brilliant. Anyway, let's round it up now. And thanks, Will, for joining us. It's great having you on the show.
Thanks for having me. Well,
and everyone subscribe, and we'll speak to you next week.
See you later. Bye.
Cheers, guys.